The cursor blinked accusingly on the generic interface of the online job board, mocking Eric Reed with the sheer volume of positions he wasn't qualified for or hadn't heard back from. 2 months. 2 soul-crushing months since the strategic realignments at his Phoenix-based graphic design agency had strategically realigned him out of a job. At 26, staring down the barrel of dwindling savings and the relentless Arizona heat radiating through his cheap apartment window, the familiar weight of being the disappointment in the Reed family felt heavier than ever. He ran a hand through his already messy hair, the anxiety a low hum beneath his ribs. Telling his parents back in their industrial Ohio hometown about the layoff had been predictably awful. His father, Robert Reed, a man whose own career as a skilled electrician had been cut short by an injury years ago, offered no sympathy, only criticism. "Graphic design," Robert had barked over the phone. "Told you it was flimsy, Eric. Should have gone into the trades like I suggested. Always work for a man with calluses on his hands." His mother, Isabella, deployed her signature brand of anxious concern, which always felt more like a veiled accusation of impending burden. "Oh, Eric, dear," she'd sighed, her voice tight with worry, mostly for herself, Eric suspected. "Are you absolutely sure you will be all right? Your rent is so high out there in Phoenix. You know you can always come home if things get too difficult." The unspoken expectation hanging heavy. Then came the inevitable comparison, the gold standard against which Eric always fell short. "Maybe your Uncle Mike knows someone hiring." He's Isabella's brother, so well connected in the business world back here, always landing on his feet. Even his older sister, Sophia, chimed in later via text. "Heard you got the boot, lol. Market's rough, I guess." "LMK, if you need someone too, look over our resume. No promises, though." Zero empathy, maximum condescension. Eric minimized the job portal window with a frustrated sigh. He opened a different, heavily encrypted browser tab, logged into his primary brokerage account, navigating through multi-factor authentication. The screen flickered, resolving into a balance that was the complete antithesis of the struggling, laid-off designer his family pictured. $5,109,247.81. His secret. His real success story, built silently, meticulously over the past 6 years. It had started during his sophomore year at Arizona State, where he studied design while working nearly full-time at a campus print shop to cover tuition and living expenses his parents claimed they couldn't afford, despite somehow funding Sophia's expensive personal development retreats. Intrigued by market dynamics discussed in an elective economics class, bored during late shifts, he'd started reading everything he could about investing. Not the conservative mutual funds Uncle Mike occasionally mentioned, but the faster-paced world of tech stocks, options, and the nascent cryptocurrency markets. He discovered he had a talent for it, a surprisingly analytical mind that could cut through market noise, identify patterns, and stomach calculated risks. He started with tiny amounts saved from his print shop job, made mistakes, learned quickly, devoured financial news, and technical analysis charts. His first significant win, a well-timed investment in a small semiconductor company just before it got acquired, provided the seed capital. After graduation, while working his graphic design job, investing became his passionate, secret second life. He spent nights and weekends immersed in research, developing trading algorithms, cautiously leveraging options, riding the volatile waves of the tech and crypto markets with increasing skill and success. He kept it completely hidden. His family's dismissive attitude towards his impractical design career made him certain they would either mock his investing as gambling, try to manage his money with Uncle Mike's dubious advice, or simply see his success as a resource to be tapped for their own needs, or Sophia's latest whims. So he maintained the facade. Eric Reed, the moderately successful graphic designer living a modest life in Phoenix, occasionally struggling between projects. The multi-million-dollar portfolio remained his closely guarded secret, a silent testament to the capabilities they refused to see. The layoff ironically provided unwanted free time but amplified the pressure of maintaining the facade, which made the conversation at the obligatory Sunday dinner during his last visit home particularly galling. Uncle Mike Rossi, Isabella's brother, was holding court as usual. Mike ran a small local financial advisory and insurance brokerage back in Ohio, presenting himself as a pillar of fiscal wisdom, though Eric had long suspected his success was more performance than reality. Mike cornered Eric after dinner, clapping him patronizingly on the back. "Eric, my boy, heard about the job situation. Tough break. But listen." He leaned in conspiratorially, smelling faintly of stale coffee and self-importance. I've got something that could be perfect for you right now. A real ground floor opportunity. He launched into an enthusiastic pitch for a local revolutionary startup planning to manufacture novelty pet clothing using recycled materials. Absolutely going to be huge. My guy says they just need one final seed round. 7,000 gets you preferred shares, Eric. Think about it. Triple your money in the 18 months, easy. Get you right back on your feet. Mike then proceeded to explain seed funding with the condescending air of a teacher instructing a slow child. Robert and Isabella, naturally, hung on Mike's every word. Listen to your uncle, Eric, Robert urged. Mike really knows the market back here. This sounds like a solid bet. Isabella added, maybe this is just the opportunity you need, honey. A fresh start, Sophia chimed in from the couch. Wow, Uncle Mike, pet clothes! That sounds like totally viral. They all looked at Eric, expecting him to jump at this golden chance offered by the family financial guru. Eric politely deflected, citing his lack of funds after the layoff and needing to focus on finding traditional work. He endured Mike's sighs about missing the boat, Robert's disappointed lecture on lacking entrepreneurial spirit, and Isabella's worried frowns about his financial future. The entire exchange felt like a scene from a particularly bad sitcom, highlighting their complete disconnect from his reality and their unwavering faith in Uncle Mike's questionable judgment. Now, weeks later, back in Phoenix, amidst the soul-crushing job search, his phone rang. Caller ID, cousin Sophia Rossi, Mike's daughter. Sophia was the exception in the extended family. Smart, independent, pursuing her own career in Chicago, and seemingly possessing a quiet awareness of her father's and the Martinez family's dynamics. She was the only one who treated Eric like an actual peer. He answered, genuinely pleased to hear from her. Hey, Leo. Eric! Sophia's voice was cheerful. What's up? Heard you might be free for your birthday next Saturday? Eric sighed. Define free. Job hunting, mostly. Why? Well, Sophia said, a slight hesitation entering her voice. Apparently the family, he could almost hear the implied air quotes, wants to take you out for your birthday. You know, cheer you up, show some support. Mom Isabella mentioned it to my mom, who mentioned it to Dad, Mike. And now, it's a thing. That Italian place, Belazzo's near Kierland, on Saturday, 7 p.m.? Eric's stomach immediately tied itself in knots. A cheer-up dinner organized by the family at Uncle Mike's likely suggestion after the investment pitch fiasco? It sounded less like a celebration and more like another opportunity for judgment and condescending advice. Sophia, I really don't know. Oh, come on, Eric, she insisted, her tone warm but persuasive. It might be awkward for like 5 minutes, but then there's pasta, and probably free wine. Look, she lowered her voice conspiratorially. Dad will probably try to talk investment opportunities again. He's obsessed with that pet clothes thing. But just humor him or ignore him. Come hang out. Get out of the apartment, please. For me. He hesitated. He genuinely liked Sophia, and she rarely asked for anything. And maybe facing them directly, now that he was feeling the acute sting of unemployment contrasted with the secret reality of his portfolio, wasn't the worst idea. Maybe it was time to stop politely deflecting. Okay, Sophia, he agreed reluctantly, forcing a lightness he didn't feel. I'll be there, but you owe me serious run interference with your dad duties. Deal? She laughed, sounding genuinely pleased. See you Saturday. The week leading up to the dinner crawled by. Eric sent out more applications, endured another pointless phone screen, and felt the familiar dread build. He almost canceled twice, but thought of Sophia's genuine effort. On Saturday evening, he put on his best interview-appropriate clothes, dark jeans, a crisp button-down shirt, took a deep breath, and drove towards the upscale Scottsdale restaurant, feeling less like he was heading to a birthday dinner and more like walking into an ambush he'd inexplicably agreed to attend. He thought again about the brokerage app on his phone, the silent millions. He didn't plan on revealing anything, but he also knew with a certainty that surprised him that he wasn't going to sit there and passively accept their narrative of him any longer. Today, things might just go a little differently. The barbecue at Uncle Mike Rossi's suburban Phoenix home was in full swing when Eric arrived, deliberately timing his entrance for peak casualness. The backyard buzzed with conversation. The smell of grilled burgers hung heavy in the warm afternoon air, and classic rock played from hidden speakers. Eric exchanged polite greetings, accepted a bottle of water, and found his cousin Sophia near the patio table laden with side dishes. "You made it!" Sophia grinned, relief evident in her eyes. "How's it going?" "Surviving," Eric murmured, scanning the yard. His parents, Robert and Isabella, were holding court near the grill, laughing a little too loudly at one of Uncle Mike's pronouncements. His sister Sophia was demonstrating something on her phone to Mike's wife, Carol Rossi, and Uncle Mike himself was circulating, playing the magnanimous host, occasionally casting speculative glances towards Eric. The trap felt obvious. For about an hour, Eric managed to engage in superficial conversations, mostly with Sophia and a couple of distant cousins he barely knew. He deflected questions about his job search with vague pleasantries. Then, inevitably, as he was reaching for a handful of chips, Uncle Mike cornered him near the drinks cooler, blocking his path with practice bonhomie. "Eric, my boy!" Mike boomed, clapping him on the back again. "Good to see you out enjoying the sunshine." Now, his voice lowered slightly, taking on a tone of serious financial counsel. "Have you given any more thought to that fantastic investment opportunity I mentioned? Recycled pet couture. They're closing the seed round this Friday, son. Last chance to get in on the ground floor before this thing explodes. You don't want to be kicking yourself 6 months from now when everyone's talking about it." Robert and Isabella drifted over, clearly alerted by Mike. "He's right, Eric," Robert said, frowning slightly with paternal disappointment. "You need to show some initiative. Sitting around waiting for design jobs isn't proactive. Take a calculated risk." Isabella added her part, voice dripping with concern. "Mike knows the market, dear. This sounds like a real chance to get back on your feet quickly. Don't let foolish pride stand in your way." Eric felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the old anger mixing with a new, cold resolve forged over the past few weeks. He looked from his uncle's condescending smile to his father's misguided pressure to his mother's manipulative worry. He thought of the multi-million-dollar balance sitting silently on his phone. Enough. He took a slow sip of his water, setting the bottle down deliberately on the cooler. He met his uncle's expectant gaze, his own expression calm, almost serene. "Uncle Mike," Eric began, his voice surprisingly level, cutting through Mike's impending follow-up pitch. "I appreciate you looking out for me, really." He paused, letting the small group fall silent, sensing the shift in his demeanor. "But maybe, before you offer me any more can't-miss investment advice..." He reached slowly into his pocket. "You should probably get a clearer picture of my current financial landscape." He pulled out his smartphone. With deliberate, unhurried movements, he unlocked it using facial recognition and opened his primary brokerage application. The Schwab interface instantly recognizable to anyone even remotely familiar with serious investing. The main portfolio overview loaded, displaying the balance clearly at the top, followed by a dense list of holdings. He turned the phone slightly, angling the screen first directly towards Uncle Mike, holding it steady just inches from his face. "Just a quick snapshot," Eric said quietly. Mike Rossi leaned in, squinting slightly in the bright sunlight, his jovial expression beginning to falter as his eyes focused on the screen. Then his face froze. The color drained visibly, leaving his usually ruddy complexion pale and slack-jawed. He blinked rapidly, sputtering silently, unable to form words as he registered the number displayed, a figure clearly in the high 7 figures, followed by a complex list of tech stocks, ETFs, options contracts, and cryptocurrency tickers. Eric then calmly, almost casually, angled the phone screen slightly, so his parents and Sophia, who had drawn closer curiously, could get a clear view over Mike's shoulder. He watched their identical reactions ripple across their faces, wide-eyed shock, slack-jawed disbelief, rapidly followed by confusion, and then something else. Not pride, not happiness for him, but a dawning, unmistakable glint of resentment and perhaps naked avarice. Utter silence fell over their small group, a pocket of stunned stillness amidst the cheerful background noise of the barbecue. Sophia Rossi, standing slightly behind Eric, had a hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide but holding a distinct sparkle of amusement. As Uncle Mike continued to stare, seemingly unable to process the information, Eric continued, his voice still quiet but now laced with the cool confidence of undeniable expertise. "Regarding recycled pet couture," he said conversationally, retrieving his phone, "I actually did take a brief look at their prospectus after our last chat. Sophia kindly forwarded it." Sophia gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "Frankly, Uncle Mike," Eric continued, his tone shifting to polite but clinical analysis, "the projected 3x ROI within 18 months seems highly speculative, particularly given the extreme saturation in the novelty pet apparel market and their complete lack of proprietary IP or distribution agreements. The burn rate indicated in their financials, he added, is alarming for a pre-revenue entity, suggesting a critical dependency on immediate and currently unsecured Series A funding just to survive the next 6 months. The overall risk-reward profile, Eric concluded gently, meeting his uncle's now panicked eyes, is extremely unfavorable. Personally, I wouldn't allocate any capital towards it at this stage. Far too much downside risk. He delivered the assessment with the effortless authority of someone who actually understood venture capital, risk analysis, and market dynamics, completely shredding Uncle Mike's carefully cultivated image as the family's financial guru, exposing his sure thing, as likely amateurish or even predatory, right there in front of Robert, Isabella, and Sophia. Mike Rossi turned a shade of beet red, utterly humiliated, opening and closing his mouth wordlessly like a landed fish. Robert and Isabella stared, first at the spot where the on-screen had glowed, then back at Eric, their minds clearly struggling to reconcile the disappointing and struggling, laid-off nephew with the quietly confident multi-millionaire investor politely dismantling their brother's financial advice. Sophia just looked stunned, perhaps a flicker of resentment in her eyes as she realized the scale of success her failure of a brother had achieved entirely without them. Eric calmly pocketed his phone. He looked around at their shocked, speechless faces. "So," he said, his voice still level, "as you can see, while I appreciate the thought, I am managing my finances adequately at the moment and don't currently require external investment opportunities or unsolicited advice." He paused, then added with a touch of final cutting irony, "But thank you all for your deep concern for my future." He stood up smoothly from leaning against the cooler. "Happy birthday to me," he murmured, mostly to himself. He nodded politely towards the stunned group. "Sophia," he caught his cousin's eye, "thanks for the invite. Good seeing you." Then, addressing the others with a cool finality, "I think I'll head out now." He turned and walked away from the barbecue, away from their frozen tableau of shock, humiliation, and dawning resentment. He didn't look back, didn't wait for the inevitable sputtering or accusations to begin. He heard Sophia call his name tentatively once. "Eric, wait!" But he kept walking, getting into his aging but reliable sedan parked down the street. Driving away, he felt a profound sense of release, so potent it was almost dizzying. The charade, the exhausting performance of being the family disappointment, was finally irrevocably over. The truth was out, delivered not with anger or shouting, but with quiet, undeniable facts, the language of numbers they claimed to respect, but clearly didn't understand when applied to him. Back in his apartment, the quiet felt different tonight, not lonely but peaceful, liberating. He knew the calls and texts would likely start eventually, once the shock wore off and the entitlement resurfaced in new forms. Demands for explanations, accusations, perhaps even attempts to angle for a piece of his success. He picked up his phone, opened his contacts, and methodically, calmly blocked their numbers. Robert Reed, Isabella Reed, Mike Rossi, Sophia Reed. He kept only Sophia Rossi's number. He didn't do it out of spite, but out of a calm certainty. He had delivered his final statement. There was nothing left to say. Protecting his newfound peace required building a final, impenetrable boundary. He looked around his modest apartment, then glanced at the still-open brokerage app on his phone. His life wasn't defined by their opinions anymore. His worth wasn't measured by their skewed standards. He had built his success in silence despite their dismissal. Now he could finally start living it, quietly, peacefully, entirely on his own terms. The disappointment had finally found his own definition of success. This story illustrates the corrosive nature of family scapegoating and judging others based on preconceived notions rather than reality. It highlights that true success and self-worth are internal, built through perseverance and talent, regardless of external validation or dismissal. Sometimes the most powerful response to condescension and disrespect isn't loud confrontation, but the quiet, undeniable proof of one's own achievements. Setting firm boundaries, even with family, is crucial for protecting one's peace and authentic self when faced with toxic dynamics. Ultimately, living well and finding fulfillment on your own terms is the most profound form of vindication.